Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Pastor. Uh, Today we're continuing through the Sermon on the Mount, and we're going to look at the passage that Jesus talks about divorce. This is verse 31 of chapter 5. Jesus says, "It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." Those are pretty strong words and pretty strong commitment towards marriage. I think in order to understand Jesus' teaching, it's helpful to understand the religious teaching of the time. There were two strong schools of thought within the Pharisees. There was the school of Shammai and the school of Hillel. The school of Shammai taught that a woman needed to do a pretty serious offense. They interpreted Moses saying in Deuteronomy as there needed to be a pretty serious offense that a woman did in order to get a divorce. And you're going to hear just for a man to divorce a woman, it's because unfortunately back in those days, women couldn't divorce men. We don't understand that culture, but that's the way it was. But Shammai says it needs to be a pretty serious offense. Now, he didn't necessarily name all the offenses, but he says it needs to be a pretty serious offense. The school of Hillel said it could be any offense. The example he uses is that if a woman burned her husband's dinner, he can divorce her over that. There was another rabbi at the time, pretty popular, who said that if a man finds another woman that pleases him more, he can just divorce his wife and marry her. Well, that's the context that Jesus is giving his teaching on divorce. And he basically says, you guys missed Moses' teaching. He said the only reason Moses would have allowed divorce would have been for adultery. He says, unless a woman commits adultery, there's really not another offense. And the problem that they had back then is that they were just flippantly taking what God intended for marriage. They were just throwing it out the window. Jesus, and he's going to talk about in other times that, it is written that a man should leave his mother and father and cleave to a wife. And we're to cleave, we're to attach, we're to be part of that. Just read a book on marriage and how to reconcile people who've been divorced, and they're talking about is attachment, getting people to attach in love, attach to God. And that's what Jesus is talking about. This is really not necessarily a pro-divorce passage or an against divorce passage. It's a pro-marriage passage. Jesus says, you guys need to take your marriages a whole lot more seriously. God intended one man, one woman for life. That's it. And he's not saying that they can never divorce. He says, well, if somebody's committed adultery, been unfaithful, then yes, that is a reason to divorce. But he's wanting to take the teaching from, okay, is it permissible to divorce, to saying you need to take your marriage seriously. Now, I know a lot of people have taken this passage here but I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. And a lot of people have taken that. I've actually had people who were divorced refuse to marry again because of this passage. They just say, well, I can't marry again. But interestingly enough, some of them live with their spouses rather than marrying again. And I think that they've missed the point. I don't think divorce is the unforgivable sin. I think God can forgive you. I think you can remarry. But I think Jesus is saying that's not God's perfect plan. And God wants the plan for you to commit to one person for life. And so he's very pro-marriage. He was very much against the very liberal teaching of the time of the school of Hillel, where it just says, hey, if you find somebody else, you can divorce your wife. If your wife burns you dinner, you can divorce her. If she makes you mad, you can divorce her. He's saying, no, that's not marriage. That's not what God intended. God intended for you to be with one, to cleave, to attach, to be together. And that's the goal for today. So wherever you're at today, if you're single, Paul's going to say there's nothing wrong with being single. In fact, he says it's actually even better to be single. And he says, I recommend it because you can serve God better. If you're married, I would say do everything you can to attach to your spouse and to cleave to that spouse and to commit to that spouse. Nobody else, nothing else. And if you're divorced and you're remarried, then make this marriage like that. Commit to them, cleave to them, and rework your way. And we serve a great God, a loving God, and a forgiving God, but a God who also believes in marriage. And I believe in your marriage too. So today, may you be blessed. May you be blessed in your life, whether you're single or whether you're married, and commit to God first, and then to your significant other if you're married. Blessings upon you, and we'll look at the Sermon on the Mount some more tomorrow. Have a great day.